Now the trees sang the song to me. He said the birds sang it to the breeze, just in case I was feeling down.
Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. My name is Stephanie Wilson Coleman, and I am your host for tonight's show. I want to remind the viewers at home that this is a call-in show, so get ready to call in with your questions. The number is 312-738-1845. I've always promised to bring you the best in programming, and tonight will be no different. And I know I say that every time, and you guys on the edge of your seat just wondering, what could it be now? But joining me is someone that I feel like is an old friend, because this is like the second time we've done this.
Yes.
Joining me tonight is Deborah Vines, and Deborah Vines is the founder and executive director of the Answer Inc. And the Answer Inc. is an organization that handles all of the concerns for autistic children. Deborah was encouraged to start this organization because she too has an autistic child. Jason, who's absolutely handsome, is 21 years old now, and he was her encouragement to do the great things. So I want to thank you, Deborah, for joining me again. I want you to tell the audience a bit about your organization and all of that, and then we can roll on with the conversation.
Okay, well, thank you again for having me, Stephanie. It's always a pleasure. As you stated, the Answer Incorporated is an organization, actually we're an agency now, that provides support and resources, education, advocacy, and recreation for parents and caregivers of persons with autism and other developmental disabilities. Because usually when a child is diagnosed with autism, it's a dual disability, be it cerebral palsy, ADD, it's always dual, so we don't want to leave anyone out, but our primary core is autism.
Now, you're a 501c3?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And where are you located?
We're located in Forest Park, but we provide services for persons in Proviso Township and the entire Chicagoland area.
Oh, and how can people find out more about you after the show?
Well, you can call us at 708-296-5651, or you can email us at info@theanswerinc.org, or we also have a website at www.theanswerinc.org.
Okay, now we can talk. That we've got some little housekeeping out of the way. Autism, I've discovered recently, has been diagnosed in 150, one out of every 150 child will be diagnosed with autism. And what I wanted the people at home to know, and the parents and aunts and other caregivers, because sometimes the symptoms will be noticed by more than just the parents. What are the symptoms? When should you be concerned? What differences occur between children who will be later diagnosed as autism as opposed to those who won't be?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question, because early detection is really the best detection. When we first started noticing different signs in Jason, and when he was about 18 months old, he was doing everything that a normal child does, the babbling, the cooing, the pulling up, and then one morning everything just stopped. So we took him to the hospital, and he wasn't saying a word. He was very lethargic. And 20 years ago, autism was really just not as publicized as it is today. So the doctor said, okay, your son has autism. And I said, oh, who? And so I began to read. But in answer to your question, the different signs and symptoms would be just a blank stare, constant spinning of anything, no response to a question that you might ask, echolalia, which is repeated speech. And you will find this in older children, because some children have reversed at 6 years old, which is very rare. But usually it's at 18 months. That's the youngest that I've heard at 18 months. But usually a mother or a caregiver can notice a sign in your child that is something different. It's just not something that's just not right. And in the younger children, they're not rolling over, and they, you look at them and they just look straight ahead, and no kind of signs of laughing or not even crying very much.
Oh, wow. Now, 21 years ago or 20 years ago, how did you research it?
Oh, my goodness.
Because I know 20 years ago, there was just not much, and we
There
had
was no
about
internet. I mean, the internet was there, but I didn't have a computer. I went to every library. I wanted to read every article. I asked every question. I went to every school, because even in the schools, there weren't very many autism programs. They had every type of disability just lumped into one classroom. So Jason ended up in several different schools because he just was not getting what he needed at one particular school. So I took him to another one. I really don't want to say the name on the air. But I took him to another school, and took him to another school, and then I began to have school at home. He would have school, we would have school at home. I would just go on and on with just repetitive learning, repetitive. And even now, with some things that I want Jason to learn at 21 years old, I still just drive it into him. I mean, with speech, with crossing the street, with his academics is very, very low, but he has self-help skills that's just out of this world. So I took what I knew that he was learning and grasping and just really held on to it.
Okay.
Because Jason cannot count change from $1, but he knows everything that's going on around him. He doesn't know danger too much, but
Okay.
he takes care of himself really well.
Now that's another thing is, what about danger? Because you've got a child now who can find themselves in strange situations. They're not verbal. Most of them aren't verbal. And even those that are verbal aren't necessarily fluid in their speech. So how do you protect the child?
You know what? When I find out the answer to that, I think I'll probably write a book.
Okay.
Because that's another program that we're rolling out with our agency, because little do people know that our children are really targeted for violence more so than anyone else, because when you first look at a child with autism, a lot of times you can't really tell that they have a disability there. They don't have any disfigurement in the face until they start doing the different things that they do with their hands or looking around in the ceiling, or some of them are verbal, some of them are not. My son, he doesn't hold very much conversation, but he does talk when he wants something. So, I mean, a person in the street, he would definitely be targeted. So, really, it's really nothing that can be done except monitoring at all times. Always has to be monitored.
Now, what about school? Well, you mentioned homeschooling and you mentioned other schools. Are there more schools available now for children with autism than, say, 20 years ago?
Yes.
How do parents find them? What questions should they ask?
Well, first of all, after a parent gets the diagnosis that their child has autism, they should find a school that has a classroom just for autism.
Okay.
Don't get your child lumped up with other disabilities and, you know, the high functioning or the low functioning. Find out where your child is. And actually, if you have a child that's low functioning, you really want them around someone that's high functioning, because children learn from other children.
Okay.
So I would suggest that, you know, you look for a school in the community that has primarily an autism classroom, or go to an autism school, because they've opened, I think, 2 in the Chicagoland area, and there's one in Burr Ridge, there's one in Naperville. So it's several all around the Chicagoland area, opposed to when Jason got his diagnosis.
Now, what happens in a typical classroom with autistic children?
Well, you know, that's a very, very important question, because it depends on the facet of the classroom. In a low-functioning classroom, I would suppose that the teacher would concentrate more on cognitive skills, as far as ABCs, name recognition, writing, because my son really works on a lot of his writing skills, because a lot of children with autism, their gait is not very well, so their hand over pencil, they can't grasp whether to write straight and correct. So they work on a lot of those skills, and then a lot of other skills like danger, speech. Jason has speech, and then